here at last. Evil fills the whole podcast. The spirits ask you all to choose the horror films your hosts would view. Now Carter, Doge, and Jordan must satiate the monster's bloodlust. Their reckoning is overdue in the horror of Chunktober II.
Hello and welcome to Two Chunks and a Hunk. That was supposed to be scary and it was missed out fire on accident. My name is Jordan Wonders, and this week I am your chunk.
I'm Doge, and it's heartening to see so many strange new faces here today. I know my hunk would be very touched and probably a little suspicious.
And I'm Carter, and Hunk.
But which one was that?
Chunk.
Oh.
It was Chunk. Oh. You get the chunk.
Yeah, totally.
Cool, man. For sure.
Totally, yeah.
Doge,
yeah.
You're the hunk. Tell us why.
It's a big day for me. Guys, it is Tuesday, October 5th, when this episode originally releases, and I have a full day of celebration planned. It's probably the most important day of my life. It is my half birthday. And I'm 27.
So it should only be a half day.
27 and a half. And it's just, this is the day everybody dreams about. You know, they call it your sweet 27 and a half for a reason. And it's just because the day is so magical and there's so many things I can do now.
MTV's working on a TV show right now. My super sweet 27
and a half. It's called my super duper sweet 27 and a half. And it's just a magical day in every boy's life.
You have a glow about you.
I know. I wasn't trying. I didn't want to bring it up because I'm feeling really good. I'm really feeling confident. But yeah, I'm glad you noticed.
You have a glow about you. Hunk was a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's obvious, right? And you can tell. I mean, you can tell by listening to me that I'm kind of on cloud 10. It's even better than cloud 9. And I'm up there. I'm
cloud 9.5.
Cloud 9.5.
9 3/4.
Yeah. I'm just up there. I'm riding high. I'm enjoying my special day. It is all about me today. And I've got lots of great treats planned.
Maybe we should have made the hunk Jesus just to help cleanse, just for the sake of like getting us.
Yeah, that might have been
through what we're about to talk about.
That might have been a good call.
It's Chunktober
but
II.
It's fine. It's your half birthday.
It's Chunktober II.
It is.
The spookies, the witches, the ghouls, the goblins, the bats, the spider webs.
Yeah.
The mini candy bars. But here at Two Chunks, we're the house that's given out king-size candy bars. And let me tell you why.
It's expensive.
This series was put to a vote. And top 4 winners of the vote are what we're talking about. And we ended up yesterday with our first ever final tie.
Yeah.
For 4th place.
It was amazing. That was amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
The final tie was between the seminal classic.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Carter.
I was just going to say, so many movies got a lot of votes.
Yeah, dude, there were bangers on this list. This was a list, you know? But the final tie was between the seminal classic, the Jamie Lee Curtis vehicle, Halloween.
1978.
John Carpenter. And the Ari Aster. It was his directorial debut.
First big film. Yeah, first major film.
The others were very small. Was it
2018?
2018.
2018's Hereditary. And I'm the only one on this podcast that had previously seen both of these movies. I'm sure, Carter, you've seen at least Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And Doge, you'd seen neither?
I had seen neither.
So I'm as the only one that had seen both, I was pretty staunchly in the camp of, please don't make me watch Hereditary. For the love of all things good, please don't make me watch this movie again. And I love horror. I just did not want to watch this movie again.
Have you already said how our tie was settled?
Yeah, I'm getting there because here's the kicker of the whole thing. The people we love the most, the people we hold dearest is who we brought this final decision to. We decided this is a first, this is historic. Let's go ahead and set a precedent that for a final tie, we create one final 2-vote poll or like 2-choice poll for our Patreon, our Discord channel.
Our highest tier of Discord, apparently.
Our highest tier.
A new perk that these folks get is to be the final tiebreaker in the event of a real Halloween Hereditary type of situation.
I like it because I don't want to make that choice because then it's us picking the series. Right. You know, I like
Yeah.
Anyway, a message that I saw pop up in our Discord, and I'm not going to say who said it, was it said, I just want to make the boys watch this.
Yeah, that was pretty.
I want to make them
cool.
squirrel. I didn't enjoy that. You know, there's a lot of power you can get for $5. You legitimately are feeling like you can control things, and you really can. And there were some people that were like, I'm pretty certain it seemed as if they voted for Hereditary, but were like, I'm never going to watch.
Yeah, they were like, I'm not watching it. I just want to make the boys watch it.
Like, and someone voted and then just said, I read the Spark Notes and I at least have an idea of what it's about because I'm not watching this movie.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
So our Discord was pretty split. In fact, I would say the most split possible because it seemed like everybody was in the Discord saying things like either gotta be Hereditary because I want the boys to watch it and I won't watch it myself, or can't be Hereditary, I refuse, it's gotta be Halloween.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, the vote came down to one. Hereditary versus Halloween, which is why by one vote today, the first movie of Chunktober II that we are going to discuss is Hereditary.
Yay! It is just occurring to me that as you're saying all of this, I'm understanding that I have sold a pleasant evening in my life for $5.
Yes, correct.
That's what I've decided a pleasant evening is worth to me. If you give me $5, you get to be in charge. Yeah. If you give me $5, you get to be in charge of how unpleasant my movie watching experience gets to be at this point.
So anyway,
I like it though. I think it's strong that we went ahead and said, you know what? Because listen, we've got the power, people. We don't use it, but we could make something up. You don't see the results of the surveys.
That's very true.
We could just
honestly,
be like,
we could just put our thumb on the scale.
We're gonna get to it. Obviously, we're going to get to the discussion and we're about to have a synopsis. But to me, especially, I don't know if it was harder for me to watch the second time or the first. I think it was harder to press play the second time.
Yeah.
Than it was the first. It was an easier watch maybe because I knew what was coming. It was a harder beginning because I knew what was coming. But I'll say this. If we can watch Hereditary, this is the guy at the lunch table who's like, I'll eat anything. Like Two Chunks has become the guy who's like, people are like, try this, it's nasty. And he's like, whatever. And just throws it down his mouth.
Give me $5 a month, I'll eat a staple.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, come on, dude, at least make a face. I know that's hot. Like, make a face.
Yeah.
You're impressive. Just don't be so coy about it.
This is the movie version of the one chip challenge. And somebody out there's like, no, actually I know there's much worse than Hereditary. I'm just saying. Anyway, Doge, give us a synopsis so we can begin discussion of this great film.
In celebration of all things scary, I present to you a Scarenopsis from IMDb.
This week's Scarenopsis was written by In the Rose Steve.
Whoa!
Annie is a wealthy model maker with a family history of mental instability. After her elderly mother passes away, Annie, her disturbed daughter Charlie, and eventually her teenage son, Peter, begin to experience strange visions and compulsions, much to the distress of her skeptical husband, Steve.
No scarier name than Steve.
We're quaking in our boots.
I love how scary the word eventually is.
Eventually.
Stuff's going to get creepy soon.
Oh God, when is soon?
If you're not scared yet, just wait.
All right.
Oh, man.
Can I just start with a sweeping statement?
Are you going to say this movie's hilarious? Because I thought it was so funny.
So funny, dude. No. I'm going to start with a sweeping statement, and I'm sorry if it spoils kind of my overall opinion on this movie, but we only have so much time, and there's a lot to unpack here.
Sure.
From my perspective, this is Jordan's opinion only. This does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Two Chunks and a Hunk LLC. Hereditary is an incredible movie, and I hate it. It is so good, and I hate it.
I think I'd agree with that. This is probably a one and done for me.
Yeah. I thought so.
I don't know if this would be a rewatch situation.
I agree too. And what's so fun when we do, especially genre series, is it has me reevaluating my overall experience in the genre.
Right.
And for Hereditary, I think I've decided the scariest things to me, the things that scare me the most, are things like possession.
Yeah,
I think.
for sure.
I think because, and it would be an interesting survey too. But I think anyone who has had any kind of like maybe life in like religion, like possession is something that I know to have had existed, and honestly, don't not think it can still happen. Which is a roundabout way of saying
your
like
trail here. Yeah, sure.
Of that, like anything that could be real to me or even close enough is really scary.
Sure.
Personally.
Sure. I'm with you. Yeah, I think this movie, and we'll get into it, I think this movie crosses into the realm of like, come on, for me, a little bit.
I mean, of course it does. It definitely does. But in those moments where you just get to fabricate ring wraiths.
Sure.
And the things that don't exist.
Sure.
Yes.
Hereditary is close enough to home that someone could, there's still articles and stuff about people that like can be possessed. And it's the kind of thing to where I can't just straight up say, and again, yes, getting an imp king or like getting a medieval demigod to take over the body of a male subject. Yes, it starts to get pretty goofy with a lot of that kind of stuff. But to say that there could possibly be a possession is way closer to me than
sure
Alien or a monster movie.
Well, let's not pretend that
something
aliens
like that.
couldn't happen. Let's relax there a little bit.
But it could be a xenomorph.
So I'm going to super dump now because I'm going to have a hard time talking about this movie without this lens. Okay? Because I'm glad you brought this up, Carter. My super dump is the last 15 minutes of this movie. It's very scary. It's very effective scary. It's very, it's hard to watch. Like the last 15 minutes are basically, I told Doge and Jess invited Callie and I over because they could not bear the thought of watching this movie alone at the nighttime.
I love that.
So we came
Carter
over to...
watched it. You watched it during the middle of the day, right, Carter? Yesterday?
That's the way to do it. We came over to Sherpa them through the experience. Had glasses of water and some blankets, some safe around. It was fine. But I told Doge, this movie is like if the scariest roller coaster in the world ended with you getting shot in the face. The last 15 minutes of this movie, very visually scary, very hard to watch. Yes, very effective. Good job. Completely lost me. The first time I watched it, the second time I watched it, I spent the first 75, 80% of the movie going, wow, this movie is this brilliant exploration on grief and the way that people grieve. And I think we're going to find out that that Annie has maybe inherited her mother's DID, and that's the hereditary portion of this, is that the stress of losing her daughter has caused her to her mental illness to sort of show itself a little bit more, and that's what's going on here, and it's very scary, and it's so brilliant. And I really thought I was going to end loving this and saying it's the best horror movie I've ever seen. And then it just goes like full blown legit supernatural at the end, which to me. And I'm not saying supernatural stuff in horror movies. We'll get to some of that. That's really great and fun. But to me, it just, I don't know. Maybe if it was just a cult with no sign that the supernatural was working, but it was a group of people that believed in it. Or maybe if there was preferably no cult at all, no connection to this demon thing at all, and was just the stages of grief and her mental illness functioning together in a bad way. But something about the end and how off the rails it goes dilutes this movie for me and takes it from what could have been, I would say, a perfect horror movie for so many reasons we're going to get into, to not something that I would put in the same caliber as like Insidious or The Conjuring, but just something less than what it could have been, in my opinion. Something scarier, I think. It becomes scarier for the last 15 minutes, but it becomes worse, a worse movie, in my opinion.
So what you're describing is sort of like It Comes at Night. Did you ever see that?
No, but it's starting to have a resurgence, like a critical turnaround.
It Comes at Night is fantastic. I watched it on Halloween a couple of years ago. But that's, I mean, spoilers for a few-year-old movie. That's kind of the deal, is that there is no monster, and it's paranoia is the monster. And I think that was far more unsettling for me at the end of it, because like, I had no trouble sleeping last night. And even as I was like trying to go to sleep, I was like, King Payman, that's kind of interesting. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Who knows? You know what I mean? But like, I don't know, man. I'm trying not to super dump as well right now. I'm going to save it. But yes, you're right.
The only reason I did is because there's a lot I feel the need to talk about that I can't unless you know the part of the movie that turned me off.
Yeah, it does. It kind of gets real lore heavy to me at the end.
And I'm even down.
Almost like, it's almost like let's put a team of clerics together to defeat a demon king. You know what I mean?
I'm even down
it's
to
like almost
find out.
fantasy.
Yeah.
And I totally understand. Ari Aster has said this movie, even with the supernatural elements, is obviously still a metaphor for grief. I totally get that. But even if we wanted to say Grandma was a part of a weird cult and this lady Joan is trying to get Annie to delve into the supernatural stuff, to me, this movie ends up being more effective if none of that is there. And the scariest thing is facing your own grief under the weight of additional mental illness. And like if the visions that are being seen and the scary things that are happening and the breakdowns that we watch are simply because these are people hurting with no way to explain it because it's just too awful what has happened.
Yeah. It becomes way more upsetting than like straight up and down horror at that point. Yeah. Which it was definitely upsetting.
I would imagine the King Payman stuff is like, that's where for Ari, believe the lore of how he wrote this script or not. Because he said at first it was just going to be a family drama, but then he decided to make it horror. I mean, the decision to make it horror feels like those last 15 minutes.
Totally. And it feels like it's a different movie, and you can tell the horror, the true horror. It was going to be an unsettling movie no matter what, but the true horror of the movie feels so tacked on to me at the very end.
And I'll say a couple things here because I don't want to, and I don't think you are. I don't think either of you are completely discounting the last 10 or 15 minutes.
No, I'm not.
But I think it's interesting to have essentially his entire work, or at least the work that is known well, because he's just got the 2 movies, right? Mm-hmm. But to have Hereditary and then Midsommar next week, to kind of have a deeper look into just Aster as a
spoiler,
director.
I guess we're doing Midsommar next week.
We are doing Midsommar next week. Well, we sent out a clip that had all 4.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's true.
Everybody knows. I'll first of all say, I think it was. I think I got frustrated. I definitely got frustrated. There wasn't a part of me that was like, what a great idea of the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
There were parts of me that felt initially like it was lazy. It's like, oh, shoot. Well, how can we just really make people be really disturbed? But with Aster, it feels like he wants to give you moments that are visceral. I would say the entire movie is visceral. And so I think he wants to give you these moments that you'll never forget.
Yes.
Visually.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely what we get at the end. And if that's what he's trying to do, I'm down. It reminds me of the Coen brothers and having a leg sticking out of a wood chipper. Like these things that were like, that's not necessary. That's kind of ridiculous, but okay, do what you want to do.
I agree.
But I feel like, don't you feel like this is an apocalyptic movie? The end, to me, I don't think it's a hot take. It's like
what makes it the end of the world, essentially.
Yeah, what makes it interesting to me is like, here's just a family that grieves, don't we all? But you know what? Sometimes grief can turn into the end of the world because you can summon back the god of mischief. It's like that felt to me actually kind of creative. That this normal deep dive into things that we can relate to turned into the ultimate end of the world. And I don't think there's other movies like that.
I want to be very clear. I think that Ari Aster is an actual like probable genius. I think that he is an incredible director. He also wrote this for the most part. Mm-hmm. He's obviously an incredible writer. Hereditary as a movie really is brilliantly made. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about how brilliantly it's acted. I'm confident. This movie is incredible. Mm-hmm. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate what is happening here and set aside my own taste to talk about it. I'm just saying, for me, this is a lesser movie than what it could have been. I'm not saying the ending
because of the end,
right?
Yeah.
The ending is well done. It is very scary. I mean, the piano wire beheading, dad catching on fire instead of mom. All of the visuals are so visceral, and they definitely stick with you, and it is effective because of that. And I can't think of another horror movie that can do that without leaning into the like Saw gore fest kind of a thing. It's so visually effective.
This definitely did lean into the kind of gore porn though that a lot of stuff
not even
to me.
The same thing at all. In my opinion, it's not even close to the same thing as like Saw with like heads exploding and traps and all that kind of stuff.
Certainly, but it is gore with the intent of being upsetting.
Yeah, that I agree with for sure.
Yeah,
that I agree with for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have such a complicated relationship with this movie. This movie's a beating to watch.
It is. It's kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
It's if Manchester by the Sea was a horror movie.
My super dump, and I have to be careful because I don't want my super dump just to be like, I wish it didn't scare me as much. Because that's the point, right? It's supposed to be scary. But my super dump is, I think, and I'm not going to watch it again to look intently, but I think there is no humor. I think it is completely void. Completely void of anything to even make you happy. And I get it. We're looking at...
The only joke is the son staring... was it Peter?
Yeah.
Peter staring at the girl's butt in front of him in class for about 3 seconds is played up as a joke. That is the only moment of levity in this entire movie.
Yeah,
and that's fine. You know, it's kind of like, hey, when A24 is going to do horror, I also love The Witch, which didn't make this list with Anya Taylor-Joy. Nothing funny about that. Right. Nothing funny at all. But that's like... It's a different kind of horror, and maybe someday we'll talk about that movie. But with this one, it was like somebody tell a joke, like just, right. and it wasn't just about relief. It was about. I think that's kind of what took out some of the realism, and I think that might be just because specifically for me, I've dealt with grief and stuff in my family, and one of the ways for us to handle that, appropriate or not, has been at least some kind of humor.
Yeah.
And so only in my specific experience for the super dump, it made their family dynamic a little bit more unrealistic in the places that I thought it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking baggage on baggage and baggage that's full of decapitated heads over in this family. So it's like,
but that
maybe they're never going to laugh.
That's part of what makes this movie. It's such a hard movie to talk about. It's a great movie to talk about. It's part of what makes this movie effective, and also part of the reason I don't like watching it is that it is just this slog, this grim, dark slog to get through. There is no catch your breath here because we're going back in. The movie starts, and it feels like the movie hates you.
Yeah.
It wants you to be miserable for 2 hours.
There's a moment where Annie is walking in the daylight to Joan's house, and that's when I breathed.
Yep.
I was like, okay, there's other people out. There's extras on screen that I don't have to see their face or try and decide whether or not they're going to transform it. I had no idea what was about to happen.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, here's my 2 seconds. But then she walks into freaking Joni's house, and I was like, okay, well, we're done.
Yeah.
But
I think the sound design plays a huge part in that, of like not being able to catch your breath. The sound design is very, very good.
It's so good.
I think
terrifying.
It's not my super pump, but the way the sound design works together with this house that they're in, with its completely unknowable, non-Euclidean floor plan. And then how it's all shot to look like her miniatures.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. I love
it's
that.
amazing. It's wonderful.
So the bit of trivia about how they built the set of this house so that walls could be removed so it could be filmed to look like her dollhouse. That opening transition from dollhouse to Peter's room when Dad walks in and throws the suit in. I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. I have such a complicated relationship with this movie. This movie's brilliant. It's so well made. The soundtrack is deeply unsettling. The miniatures,
Colin Stetson, to have inspiration for this soundtrack, spent just hours
listening to buzzsaws and dying animals.
No, I mean, he spent hours just walking out in the woods at night, listening to the sounds all around him of animals. Yes. And it's funny that you bring that up because there are moments that you're just like, I could just see a cat dying in any corner of the frame and be like, well,
that's how special attention. I want to pay special attention through Chunktober II to those kinds of things that attempt to bypass our human brains and access our animal brains. Because I think like that deep bass rumble that's throughout this movie, that is a like subconscious frequency designed to elicit an emotional response.
It's ominous.
And the way things are framing is just subtly off in the cinematography, the way things are framed. But I think it's really interesting with horror specifically. I mean, other genres do this too, right? There are subtle cues in action movies that make us feel a certain way. But horror, I think more than any other genre, relies on a significant portion of the creative process and the creative effort going into bypassing our mammal brains and accessing our lizard brains and getting us to feel a primal emotion.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. That wub, 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 wub sound feels like when you have an adrenaline rush and you're panicking and your ears start to close up a little bit. And it was like my heart felt that and wanted to follow the rhythm,
right?
You know, which was just it's good.
Well, and it's things like in the opening conversation, the very first time that mom goes into Charlie's room and is talking with her and is like, "Did you feel like you wanted to cry today?" The crickets are turned up so loud. Like, so the ambient noise that's happening outside the window is turned up almost to the same dB as the volume. So that naturally creates a response in you in which you lean in, but then there's the bass wub, 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 wub that makes you feel guarded. And so that whole sequence just becomes so unsettling, where if you mix the audio differently, that's just a mom talking to her daughter. Like, there's nothing actually scary about that.
I'd like to propose that we save discussion of individual performances for the back half of this episode. I think it's going to be a worthy conversation to hold back there. So let's as we are heading towards the middle of our episode, let's talk a little more about like the art of this film, like the filmmaking of this film, because it really is pretty flawlessly made.
Yeah.
Except for one ADR line that is so obviously poorly ADR'd that Joan has. And it's so clear that her mouth says, "You need all of your family in the same room." And she's like, "You need all your family in the house." And it's really bad.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, and Annie clawing her way out of the room on the wire. Doge pointed out that it looks like when you hold a puppy above a bathtub. It looks pretty bad.
When she like floats out when she crawls out on the wall.
Pretty bad. It's unsettling to look at because of how bad it looks.
I think it's very clear that Astor had an exact idea of what he wanted. And I know we're going to talk about a lot of the acting in a little bit, but many of the actors, especially those, I know Toni Collette had said she was really impressed. This felt like the most prepared director she'd ever worked with.
Cool.
And she's got I think she's incredibly underrated, but she's got a history, and we'll talk more about her later. But that he, everything I was reading about him and with this movie specifically is that he kind of knew what he wanted to do for a long time, even a storyboard detail type of exactly what he wanted to do. And a lot of that comes through in the set, in that the entire house is essentially a set. It's built.
Yeah.
And it's done in that way so that it can be essentially like the miniature. We can go up to it and approach it and do practical effect without having to do this, like, you see it a lot in movies, like through the wall thing that you're doing. And of course, there's not a camera that can go through a wall. It's not a ghost camera. He just says no wall at all because I want it to be as if.
You don't think it could be a ghost camera? That would be the scariest thing.
But he knew what he wanted. And I think it's very clear.
Yeah.
Very clear in how clean completely. And how there doesn't seem to be much fat. It just feels like it's just exactly the way things are framed too is like, to be honest, if we're talking about like spikes on, what is it that reads your heart, right? What is that? That
EKG?
EKG?
Yeah. Spikes on the EKG. There's maybe 4 or 2 or 3, but there is this consistent hum of things being scary. And sometimes it's just the way the set is framed. I remember looking in the room full of miniatures and just like waiting for, there was so much to soak in.
That's the movie,
there was so much happening.
This anticipation, I'm
looking in every corner, waiting for something to happen to where there's a payoff when Alex is walking around.
Yep. It's because
up in the left-hand
early
corner
they
is
show
Mom.
you grandma.
Yes.
Real early they show you grandma in the room.
In the dark. Yeah.
And then you basically spend the whole rest of the movie going, where?
Wait, what was
where,
that?
Where?
It's a bit of inoculation theory, to be honest. They're putting something already on your mind early to convince you or persuade you that it still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to start to build an anticipation for that to come. And it sucks.
And that's what
really sucks.
Yeah, right. That's
the
what I'm
best way.
saying. So I love, and my fear is that it sounds like we're like, good movie, but I hate horror, so it sucks. I love horror.
I think this is what maybe the director would even want to hear.
I think so too. That's my thing.
It's supposed to be unsettling. It's not supposed to.
I really enjoy horror movies. This is not necessarily my type of horror. I tend to lean more towards like, I don't know how to describe it so much as like sci-fi horror or like realism horror versus like spiritual horror. It doesn't.
I'm a
click with me
monster
so
and
much.
creature horror boy.
Right,
all
monster,
the way.
creature, interpersonal horror, like that kind of stuff, time travel stuff, whatever.
Comedy horror like Ghostbusters.
But I am a character-driven boy through and through, and so this movie. That's why I have such a weird relationship with this movie, because it sucks me in, and it is so fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
I would say spiritual horror is not my favorite. Spiritual horror, like I said at the beginning of the episode, scares me the most.
Yeah, it's the most effective. But this, I don't find Hereditary that scary for the ending. That's what I'm like. This movie is much scarier to me if things are left ambiguous, or if the spiritual stuff is in the background and it doesn't just straight up end with like the resurrection of a medieval demon. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't think that dilutes the points that scared me the most.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Because the most realistic scares are the peak anyways for me.
I completely
That's what makes
agree.
it scary. So I would say the last 15 minutes is a separate scare.
Can I say that the Jordan scariest scene in this movie is her dream within a dream after she follows the ants to Peter's room and then wakes up in dream number 2, and Peter is asking her, "Why are you afraid of me?" And she unwillingly answers, "I didn't want to be a mom." And then it cuts to both of them covered in paint thinner, and she's screaming, "No, I love you." Dude, I can't watch it. I can't, I almost can't look at the screen when she's doing that.
So in the reference of that dream within a dream, and in the spirit of half birthdays, may I give
is this a
half
sequel
super
to Inception?
Pump? Yeah. May I give half a super pump right
Is
now?
it about an actor or a character?
The other half is this half is not.
Go ahead.
Half of my super pump is the decision to have a specific actress playing a specific character be a miniature artist.
Right.
Specifically to paint miniatures of her life, because that's an excellent visual metaphor
Big
of
time.
the fact that she is holding her grief and holding her life at arm's length.
Yes.
And unable to process it internally. So she tries to take an objective stance on things. She even says it's an objective view of the accident.
Right.
It's not our life.
It's not about him.
And so she's protecting herself.
100%, dude.
By separating herself, removing herself from the scenes to look at them and try and figure out what's going on. That is an excellent visual metaphor. And my super dump is that the exploration of that grief and that character's journey to
Can I finish your sentence? Can I guess
to
and
become
finish your
part
sentence?
of that scene? Yeah, sure.
Leads to an actual external source of conflict rather than leading her back into herself.
Bingo.
Dude,
The demons
put.
The demons should be internal, not external.
So well put, Doge. That you have summed up my problem with the end of this movie. Keep going.
I think the movie promises, or at least led me to believe that we have this miniature artist who is so consumed with her work and has a hereditary history of mental illness and mental unwellness.
Well, and a hereditary history of tragedy.
Exactly. Been dealt horrible cards, both biologically and circumstantially. And so like these miniatures are in some way an outworking of some of that dysfunction where she cannot process the awful things that have happened to her. Yeah. And I'm fine if she goes throughout this whole movie and she sees these miniatures populated by her inner demons. I think when the movie turns to external demons as the source of the horror for Annie, I think that's when it is sort of answering a question it didn't ask.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of sets up a different movie. And that's not to say
Dude, we should do a movie podcast together.
I think that's just not to say that the end isn't scary, but that's the end of a different movie, I think. And we've kind of already talked about this, but
so well
that was
put,
just
dude.
The overwhelming sense I walked away from. It's like, you can't have the miniatures and King Payman in the same movie. Those are different movies. And I think the miniatures are a wonderful, wonderful setup, and it's such an intriguing, promising story hook for an internal demon kind of horror movie. But it feels like a mismatch with the last 15, 20 minutes of this movie.
Wow.
It's like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Did you guys watch 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah.
At the
First
end
of all, that
Cloverfield
movie
Lane,
is amazing until it isn't.
It's
much
fantastic.
Like Hereditary.
But then, like, the whole time you're led to believe John Goodman is this crazy guy who's kidnapped Mary Elizabeth Winstead because he, for some reason, believes there's aliens exploding the world above. But he's just a sick individual who wants to capture young women. Turns out, nope, there's actually aliens, and he was right.
And
all
John
along.
Goodman was the hero, and it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I agree.
I felt the same way walking away from this movie that I did 10 Cloverfield Lane, where it's like, that is answering a question that it didn't ask.
Yeah.
But
dang, dude.
Other than, I mean, that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it was, I didn't enjoy it, but that's not to say it's not a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like you're having like this incredible meal that from the start is just this wonderful experience. And then, maybe it's this cut of steak that you're like, I had no idea that you could do this. And then you get to the last piece, and inside it, there's like a rolled up fortune from like a fortune cookie.
It's a fortune steak. Yeah.
And it's like, why did you put these two things together?
I mean, I'll eat around this, but I guess that's interesting.
The meal's called a Fortune 500, and it's a $500 steak meal with a special surprise.
And you know what? And I know I'm not defending Aster, because I think it's already clear that we all really like this director, and
he doesn't need defense. He
doesn't right. He doesn't need defense, but it's like when everything else is so good. Mm-hmm. The things that you think might have gone wrong or the critiques are magnified.
Yeah.
Because you got this far. It's like you did this much.
To continue your food metaphor, it is a beautiful 5-star 3-course meal, and the dessert is a cosmic brownie.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on.
It's a little bit to me what Spielberg almost accidentally made with Jaws. And then the shark puppet was so bad, they had to leave it off screen for the majority of the movie. And so the audience's mind was left to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, right.
Once I think we fill in too many blanks by the end of this, where it's like, oh, well, I understand it, so it's not scary.
100%. Yeah. Once they show the monster in the daylight in its entirety.
Right.
Yeah, shouldn't have tied a bow there.
It's the last shot of Alien where the xenomorph is a dude in a suit just cartwheeling through space.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not worried at the end of Hereditary. I'm not worried about my own inner demons. I'm worried about the chance that King Payman's going to end the world.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, not too worried about that.
That's very good. That's very good. So succinct. Do you say the first C?
It's pronounced successful.
Successful. Succession.
Yes. Yeah.
It's time for shout announcements. Welcome to Spooky Shout Announcements. It's the spooky part of the show, where we give spooky shout outs and make spooky announcements. The first spooky shout out, I'm gonna break cultural norms here. I'm gonna give a shout out to my mom.
Okay.
She just found out she has to get a hip replacement. Yeah.
Oh, no.
She's bone on bone, baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's basically going to be like a liquid metal Terminator at this point, right?
So I already have made jokes about my mother being a cyborg.
Great.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the spawn of a cyborg, which is very exciting.
Cyber Mom.
Coming this summer.
No.
The $6 billion mom.
Also, she's gonna hate that I said that on this podcast.
Yeah.
But
sorry,
fortunately, she doesn't listen.
Oh, she super listens.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Is a patron.
My mom is a patron.
I'm kidding.
But she won't listen to the Hereditary episode, so don't even trip. But
I hope she doesn't trip either.
Nice. With her hip. The first big announcement next week. And if you follow us on social media or listen to the first half of this episode, you will already know what I'm going to say. But our next movie, it's Ari Aster, Back to Baxter, Midsummer, coming next
I do
week.
want to point out that the hypothetical you just posited is that somebody skipped the first half of this episode to listen to shout announcements.
Statistically, there is somebody whose favorite part of the show is this.
I don't want to meet them.
I do.
No, I do.
I do.
I love them.
I love them very much. Yeah, it's Midsummer next week. This is the only movie on our list that I have not seen. And based on
Am I the only one who's seen it?
Oh, yeah, I guess you are.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Based on our track record with Ari Aster, I predict a fun-filled romp through the sun-drenched hills of some Nordic country, and it's going to be beautiful, and I'm going to love it. No, what I predict is me going, Florence Pugh, woo! But anyway, Midsummer next week. Check it out.
Friends, are you looking for a place to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where everybody knows
Your name.
your tag. What is it called when you
Handle?
have
Your handle?
a place to go where everyone knows your handle?
Dude,
Cyber
hold on.
cheers.
Halloween time? A huge raven just landed in my front yard.
What? There's a message in its beak.
Get her autograph.
That's so raven.
It's Raven Simone.
Hey, Raven. Rah!
Disclaimer, we're not calling Raven Simone a huge raven. She's just a regular raven.
She's a regular raven. She's a raven-sized raven.
If you are a Patreon member, you already know the influence that you have on this show. I'm not going to rhyme anymore because that would have been fun. But
Now you're done.
I need to hurry because now, well, you can beat me to it and show off if you want. Wow, you rhyme so well. The $3 tier gives you the opportunity to have a vote in an extra vote in these polls. And as we've seen and as we've said already, that has a ton of influence. If you want to have the closest thing to hosting this movie podcast, the $5 tier is that. Because essentially what we've done on Two Chunks and a Hunk is take something that had existed years ahead of time, in which you just get with those friends that you know love movies as much as you do. And that's different than saying the ones that love the same movies you do, because if you've listened to this podcast, that's not the case. But it is a place that I think is incredibly thoughtful, to be honest. I think this $5 tier is just full of people that it's a little extra oxygen to kind of get through the week and be excited about. Because it feels like with the amount of people that we have in there now, it kind of touches on everything. I think there hasn't been something yet that's been brought up that someone doesn't chime in and either say, I've never seen it, but I'm excited about that. Tell me more. I'm finding our $5 Discord channel to be the many channels that come with that to be something that is kind of directing some of the things that I'm watching, which is really cool as a host of the podcast. So if you want to be a part of that community, it's just $5 a month. It's not a whole lot. And you can make us do things we don't necessarily want to do.
Like watch Hereditary.
And there's that power
Like
too.
watch Hereditary.
As I said, it was thoughtful. I'm learning otherwise maybe within the
hateful.
last week or so. It
Now
can also be
That
hateful.
$3 tier's got some juice too. Don't get me wrong.
You do have them extra ads.
It's got some juice for sure. The $5 tier, it's got that sauce.
It's got extra juice. The $3 tier is
pulp.
orange juice. The $5 tier is a mimosa. Juice with a little some extra. But the $3
Some
tier,
extra in there.
you do get some good bonus eps. We're taking Carter through Back to the Future for the first time. He's in the backseat of our DeLorean, buckled in, wearing a big puffy vest. And is it safe to say he's loving it? Are you loving it, Carter?
Loving Back to the Future?
Yes.
I'm
Are you
loving the
loving the
first one.
experience of watching Back to the Future?
Oh, I definitely am.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
If you want to know how Carter feels about those movies, we're not going to give that to you for free. Are you
we just
kidding
kind of
me?
did a little bit, but
We did a little bit.
It's the
And
first
if you just
taste is
ask us,
free.
We'll tell you. Yeah.
It's no hot take, people. It's nobody's hot take.
It's the scariest time of year. And you can't argue with that legally. And there's nothing more fun than to scare your friends. And so we would like each of you listening to... Yeah. Wow.
Did I get you?
Jumped right out my skin.
Sorry.
how did Nana like that?
She's not even in the room.
Oh, okay.
She's over me. Not my grandma, by the way. Real quick, that's my dog.
I like to leave it ambiguous.
We would like each of you to share a scare with your friends.
Nice.
And you could do that by sending them this Hereditary episode and then making them watch the same movie you made us watch, which wasn't kind, but we're still your friends.
Jerks.
We would love it if we could add more scary spidery children to our scary spidery family this Chunktober.
Bundling home and car insurance with Geico is so easy, your neighbors are probably already doing it. But who? They may drop little hints like,
beautiful day out. Even more beautiful since we saved by bundling our home and car insurance with Geico.
or
Yard work is hard. Much harder than bundling with Geico, which was easy.
it may be even subtler, like,
Speaking of burgers, we bundled our home and car insurance with Geico and saved a bunch of money.
bundling is easy with Geico. Just ask your neighbors.
And now it's Geico's Motorcycle Rules of the Road. Before you ride, make sure your mirrors are clean and adjusted properly. And if you're going on a group ride, make sure the lead biker knows where they're going.
Ed, quick question. Where are you taking us?
Oh, I have no idea. What, am I the leader? Because I was following that dude with the red helmet. Where is he?
And the rule to saving on motorcycle insurance is, in 15 minutes, Geico could save you 15% or more.
It's time to talk about individual performances and characters.
My super pump is Toni Collette.
Okay.
The other half birthday half is Toni Collette.
Yeah, my super pump's Toni Collette. I
just didn't want people to think I was copying anybody, so that's why I said it first.
she is unreal. She travels the entire spectrum of emotion. Well, no joy, really, but the entire negative spectrum of emotion, certainly, in this movie. She's great in her screaming, crying, freaking out scenes. There's somebody else who's great in those scenes, too.
Freaking gut wrench.
Yeah.
For real.
When she discovers Charlie. The way they chose to like, we're looking at Alex's eyes, though.
Yeah.
Which he clearly hasn't slept all night, and we're just hearing her reaction. Ooh, wee.
Yeah. It's that kind of stuff, though. It's that stuff that I feel like is what makes this, why people picked it.
Yep.
Why it made the list and why it has
100%.
the reputation it has, which is that's not scary. That is upsetting to imagine yourself in that situation.
Right.
And I'm scared to imagine myself in that situation,
Right.
but that's not scary. That's just an upsetting,
But it is
emotionally
it is scary.
nasty thing in a movie.
It is scary. It does feel a little bit like emotional torture. But that's kind of this movie. And again, I don't
maybe
want to
maybe I just have a limited definition. Maybe I'm stuck in 1978. I'm just thinking of we could have watched Halloween instead.
Where's
of
Michael
this.
Myers? Right. Yeah.
Where's the monster with the sharp hands? You know what I mean? And it's like, that's scary, but that's not upsetting.
You just described Freddy Krueger and not Michael Myers, but I like where your head's
No.
at. I like where your head's
I know.
at.
I'm just thinking like, where's the classic slasher monster?
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
But Toni Collette is brilliant. She's unbelievable. She is. It's a close race for best performance in this movie to me, honestly. But she edges out the competition by a hair. She is just phenomenal.
There wasn't and I think this is a good opportunity to bring up a conversation here about, because this is 2018 when this came out. And, Jordan Peele's Get Out was, you would literally illustrious in award show seasons, but it's still taking the Academy and people outside of critics, the ones that are giving out the awards. I think it's taking a while for a little bit of a culture change to say, good job. I think you only get that if it's someone who's like an A-lister that was in a horror movie that did well, if they even do that horror movie. But Toni Collette should have been nominated for an Oscar.
I think it's
no way she's not.
I think it's because this is a genre film. And genre film historically is underrepresented at the Oscars. I think things like Silence of the Lambs, which we would consider maybe a horror film, are recognized because it's a drama. It's more of a drama procedural than it is a horror film. It's a straight up and down genre film, really, until Shape of Water and Get Out has not been something that the Academy seems to take seriously.
Is Ari Aster's last 15 minutes of Hereditary what kept Toni Collette out of an Oscar nomination?
I hope not.
I think so. I actually think so. Because Toni Collette's performance is so good that it sells me on my own preconceived notion that this is going to be an inner demons story.
Until she becomes a literal monster.
Until she becomes an actual headless monster.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true.
My super pump is the decision to, I think the scariest thing about this movie is that I got to know the main characters really well. I think when you look at some of the old horror, like the Halloweens and all that stuff, it's just, you don't really know the depth of these people.
That's why we got so many archetypes, so that we could skip getting to know them and go, okay, she's a teenage babysitter. Got it. Move on.
Right.
Yeah. I think the moment that you take the seminal character and put them in a counseling session within the first 20 minutes,
right,
it's got a chance to be a lot scarier than it could have been without. Because of the fact that we really get to know, and specifically it's packaged in adjacently Charlie, because we just know more about other people's opinions of Charlie than really how she feels about things. She's kind of a surrogate for early hints at demonic work. But I think the Annie, right?
Annie.
Tony, yeah. The Annie-Alex relationship is
Annie-Peter.
the crux of it.
Peter?
Actor's name is Alex.
Huh? Oh, sorry. Yes. I get those. Peter, yes. So Peter and Annie is, to me, because we're getting to know their dynamic so well, is what is absolutely terrifying.
Completely agreed.
That's what makes the, again, fully drama, not horror, the scene where they're eating dinner.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what makes it
pretty commonly, by the way, considered the best scene in this movie and one of the best scenes in all of horror movies.
I mean, it's really, really, really good. There is one of the things that can make a horror movie, like structurally, is it does feel like there's multiple peaks. It feels like there's a lot of things that you're like, oh, remember when he did that? Or remember when he, and then, oh, they were right outside the window, that kind of stuff. But I think, 95% of this one are those dramatic elements that, like Doge said already too, of like choosing to look at Peter's eyes when we're hearing her wail, the dinner, the crushing of her miniatures in her room where she's doing all that work. She's
unreal. Let's talk about Alex Wolff for a second. First of all, Alex Wolff, if the name or face sounds or looks familiar, it's probably because you're around my age and grew up with younger siblings who watched Nickelodeon in the early 2000s. He is the younger brother, the drummer from the Naked Brothers band on Nickelodeon. He and his brother are actual musicians. They're children of musicians, been acting since he was a kid. And this is, I would call, a breakout role for him in the public eye. He just recently did Old with M. Night Shyamalan, which I have not seen and have no real interest in seeing anymore. But my dude, Alex Wolff as Peter, the fact that he almost edged out Toni Collette for my Super Pump says something, man. He's got something, especially when he is acting panicked.
Yeah, he's really good.
His panic attack when he's smoking weed under the bleachers, when he's just like, just hold my hand. Very good. When he is freaking out because during the seance and he's like, make it stop. Very good. And his reaction when he breaks his nose on his desk is hard to watch.
Yeah.
He actually dislocated his jaw.
Yeah, I saw that. Ari asked her, he was like, can I break my nose for real? And Ari was like, no. You can't.
This feels like, even though I agree that Toni Collette had a better role here, I think that's just because she's an excellent actor. She's really good at her craft. I feel like Alex is fueled by loving the craft. I think he's fueled by how much he enjoys horror, how much he's studied horror. It feels like he's a little bit more of the muse of the director in this, of being like, this feels like what Ari Aster might be like in terms of just the commitment. And again, not to say Tony's not, but I think it's just because she's amazing at what she does. I think Alex fell into something that he absolutely loved and he gave everything without going too far.
I agree with you.
Which could have happened. I think there's a way that you go too far, but with what the director is presenting and writing for us, it's strange enough that reacting in that way feels relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When you're screaming about like, please stop. And we can't throw to the side the Steve's
totally
role.
Yeah.
Because he is trying to be, I think, the calm in the storm and getting everyone's head in the right place. So he is just, as Toni Collette is fully, we're catching this outside looking in experience of her explaining everything that just happened. And if there was some humor in this movie, it's there. when she's talking about all these things that obviously would feel absolutely crazy to anybody to hear. But she's getting onto it. You wish he would buy in and he just can't. That's so realistic. So he's helping right before he goes fully, whatever album that is when someone's on fire on the cover. I couldn't think of it. Before he goes fully into that.
There's 5 characters in this movie, really, when it boils down to it. There is
New York City. New York City is like a character in and of itself.
There's Peter, there's Annie, there's Steve, there's Charlie, and there is Joan, played by Ann Dowd, who is always good. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always good. She's very good.
No doubt about it.
Nice. So nice, dude.
Should we just end it? Let's just end the podcast.
Yeah, let's just kill her right there. No, she's always
the podcast.
She's always good for unsettling me in some way.
Yeah.
And Dowd is great at that. Charlie. I got to look up this young lady's name. Millie Shapiro.
Millie Shapiro.
Was this her first
perfect
movie?
Yes.
Looks like
was
it, yeah.
Perfect for this role, but is this going to be the only thing she's ever known for?
Yes.
Yes, it will.
You know, that's a fun scenario. Like, would you want to be the one-off, you know, of like this classic, like this movie character that'll be talked about for a long time? Or would you rather have just a great career?
She does a really great job. I don't want to diminish that at all. She does a really fantastic job. But I think because Charlie is the face of a lot of this, that is going to kind of follow her around for a while.
Completely.
Maybe not forever, but for a while. And just unfortunately, she got in the ring with some real heavyweight champs here.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's not even like her performance is the thing holding it all together.
Yeah, there was no hope that she would be the best thing about this movie. I think with this script and her co-stars, like, she did a great job.
Yeah,
Not to diminish her performance at all.
Method acting stuff always starts to make me be like, Jared Leto's sending dead rats to his Suicide Squad co-stars again. But I do kind of love that. I hope Jared Leto wakes up in a cold sweat every night going, I can't believe I did that.
I ruined Joker.
But and then everybody was like, the new one is you're gonna see what he was supposed to be. Same guy. It's the exact same character.
It's the same.
It's the same. He just has long hair now. Ooh, he did it. No. No love lost for me on Justice League. How did we get to that? I think that I forgot method acting. Ari asked for Alex Wolff and Millie Shapiro to go out a couple times in character as brother and sister and just sort of set the tone. And I love the idea of Alex Wolff and Millie Shapiro sitting at a Chili's with Alex just trying to make conversation and Millie
Have you talked to mom lately?
What are you learning at school right now? And she's just like smacking peas around with a fork. You're like, I'm not talking. Acting. How to be this character good? No, I think she does a great job. I do just think that because she's only really on in about 25% of this movie, and because
which is a twist.
It totally
is a huge twist. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's not assumed that the first fourth of the movie she got.
No, especially she was a huge part of the trailers, and a big part of the trailers.
And the poster. She's on the poster.
Mm-hmm. Her and her mom. Yeah. Toni Collette looks like a monster on the poster because of what they have done with the lighting on her face. She's so scary to look at on the poster.
Like skeletal. So I have a help me understand moment.
Yeah.
When we do these deep dives into a genre, like we just finished doing with Heist, there inevitably comes a moment in the series where we say, okay, what actually is a heist movie then?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we think National Treasure could be a heist movie. There's a heist in it, though it might not be a heist movie. Right. I think when we talk about peaks in this movie, the majority of the peaks that we talk about are emotionally upsetting. They're a family dealing with tragedy. If we talk about the dinner scene, we talk about mom discovering Charlie. This is the emotional aftermath of an actual tragedy that is in no way exclusively supernatural. This is a tragedy that is totally a believable real world thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is the thing that makes this horror the supernatural. And I know that seems trite, but if we think about like a movie that's hard to watch because of the emotional tragedy.
So nice.
tragedy.
Manchester by the Sea is the
emotional
closest
tragedy.
analog
Something like
to
that.
me.
I think A Star Is Born, the emotional tragedy at the very end of the Gaga Cooper Star Is Born, made me go, I probably won't watch that again.
Yeah.
There's a similar kind of emotional tragedy, devastation at the heart of this movie with some demons sprinkled on top.
So let's talk about this.
I think, hang on. My question is, I think, what is a horror movie? Is horror ever the main dish, or is it the sprinkling on top of another thing?
I think horror is the main dish of Hereditary.
Okay.
So your tragedy comes at the very end. Your tragedy is a story beat of A Star Is Born. Your tragedy
Certainly.
is all of Hereditary. Your tragedy is all of Manchester by the Sea, but Manchester by the Sea is essentially a journey of overcoming, whereas Hereditary is just a descent into the tragedy and more tragedy.
It's a story of succumbing to tragedy.
Right. And I think that's what makes it a horror movie. And it all comes down to presentation more than anything.
Sure.
Yeah. Manchester by the Sea isn't full of lingering shots with horrific discordant instruments and ghosts around the corner. It's the presentation of the story that makes it a horror movie, whereas a heist movie has to involve a heist. Horror movie is more about presentation than it is about does it go boo?
So a horror movie then, I think if we're going to say horror, it's less about the bones.
More about the intention.
Story. More about the presentation.
I think so.
Which to me would make horror the sprinkle on top.
Yeah, I would say it's the viewer's acknowledgement of the intent.
Okay.
I agree with that.
There's a lot of, most theories in like communication and leadership, especially in persuasion, is like you can't really define it unless you talk to the person that was being attempted to be persuaded, right? So I think it does have to. There's probably somebody, and that's, one of the things our mantras on Two Chunks is love what you love. It's like, go out there. Like if this didn't scare you, at that point you decide whether or not, do you think it's a horror movie? That's what's tough. It's like if it didn't scare you, was the intent in general what makes it that genre, or was it the ultimately accomplishing of what the intent was?
Did either of you watch I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
No.
I don't think so.
So this is a movie that not classified as horror, but it rides that line for me. It is not. There's nothing in it that's like jump scary. It's not scary, but it's pretty close to a horror movie.
Like I would say like Nightcrawler is a horror movie. I would say it can be. I mean, it is for me. And again, this is my own interpretation. I would say something like Ex Machina has some horror elements to me. That it's just kind of
that's the key to me. Like Ex Machina and Nightcrawler, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. These are movies with horror elements that I wouldn't. These are the National Treasure heist movie of horror, where it's like it's something else, but there's this. That's the sprinkle on top movie to me. Is like, and the twist at the end is a little bit of lime juice and some horror. And I think that a horror movie.
So I guess what I'm asking is, does Hereditary fit that? Is this a family drama about a tragedy? / horror
movie.
I think that this is a
we talked
horror
about
movie
yesterday,
centered around a family drama.
Okay.
What's tough too is like I find a lot of times if I'm trying to decide if it's horror first, I think that's being redefined right now.
That's also true.
Ultimately, culturally, I think that's being redefined because sometimes we feel like if we say it's horror first, we're taking away something from the movie. Because the history of horror has been almost synonymous with camp in a way. You know, it feels like if you're going to make a funny joke that feels, super juxtaposing, make it bloody, or make it like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like I think saying horror first is not going to be, a decade from now, something that feels like you're taking away from the like intellectual impact of the movie.
I think that's very well put. It is time to rate this movie.
We're loving this horror series, man. This time flew by.
It really did.
We're going to have a lot to talk about next week.
Sure we are. We're going to rate this using the Scientific Cinema scale made right here in our own very own Two Chunks and a Hunk test kitchens. It is perfect and as follows. The best thing we could ever say about a movie is own it. Don't lend it. Buy that poster. The next best thing is buy it. That's followed by rent it and then stream it. After that is forget it. And last, but certainly least, the worst thing we could ever say about a movie
God hath forsaken us.
I'm gonna go first. And I'm gonna buy Hereditary.
Okay.
Which this is literally probably wouldn't do, but I'm gonna buy Hereditary because I feel like there is no sense of try hard. I think you can see that a lot in a bad horror movie. If someone's trying too hard to scare you, I think he fell into it. I think Astor's mindset is pretty terrifying from the start, and I think he's doing a phenomenal job of it. I found something really interesting I want to ask about really quickly in the middle of my rating, but for me, I think I'm realizing that the horror genre, especially when I'm scared really well, is like a spark for creativity for me. I want to create things when I'm done. And I don't know what that is. And I'd love to check in like on different genres for us, but I feel inspired after a good horror movie. And I think it's because, and what'll be interesting in this series is being scared, almost like laughing. That's why I feel like they go hand in hand. Humor and terror aren't too far apart because we each have our own. We have something we feel like we can bring to the table that maybe would also, we can relate, right? So I think there's something about horror movies that is incredibly inspiring to me. And this director has done a wonderful job of it. I found myself wanting to just make things, write things, read things. And I think he did really well. I buy Hereditary.
It's great. It's very good. I'm going to rent Hereditary. I probably would have said buy it before watch number 2. I'm going to rent it. I really am disappointed by and I've done it to myself, but by what I see this movie could have been. And then what the final 15, 20 minutes turns it into. It's so different. So I think I have to rent it. I genuinely hope I don't watch this again. It's such a beating. Like it is an emotional slog. And it's a tough watch. And yet weirdly, I feel like it's worth watching once. It's actually, it's on the 1001 movies you have to watch before you die list that like constantly curated and constantly updated. Like here are the necessary movies list that one dude keeps. Man, I wish I had more information than that on who does it.
Sounds like you're making it up.
No, it's a real thing. But yeah, I get it, man. Especially for horror, I think we're going to see movies take cues from this more than, I think this is a pivot point for horror. Hereditary is. Ari Aster, maybe just in general, is. Get Out and Hereditary actually are cut from the same cloth, in my opinion.
Well, and I think it has to do with theme, right? Like I think it's because there is actually an underlying lesson or something to learn. Horror movies in the past, even the ones that are iconic,
like, don't get stabbed.
Considered great movies. Yeah, it's like, hey,
that's the lesson.
You know, teens don't have sex.
Yeah, right.
Just don't have sex.
It follows.
At least that one's spooky fun.
I didn't care for it.
I know.
Listen to my last year. My last year boy. Talk about it. I'm going to buy Hereditary, but I will not be taking the packaging off. I will put it somewhere that I forget about it because I won't watch it again. I think it's really well made. I think there is a tension at the heart of this movie between really like a straight up and down horror movie and then more of a thoughtful exploration of grief. Not to say this isn't thoughtful, but I think, Jordan, you're exactly right. What this movie could have been is the scariest apparition that haunts this movie.
Nice. Put that quote on.
We'll put that on our website.
Poster on a website.
That sounds so smart. I didn't even mean to say it. It sounds so smart. I think that's what's tripping me out, though, because I think with horror in general, there is the tension. And why we, at least for me, I have such a hard time defining it is because horror is not as, to me, as straight up and down as it seems like it could be. And as lists like we talked about on yesterday's Mini Monday make it out to be. It's better to describe it as scary because that is truly subjective. It's better to describe a comedy as this is a funny movie because that is truly subjective. You know, those are those things that it's like you can't make a list of the top 20 horror movies, but you can make a list of the top 20 movies that scared you the most.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think I think that is to me where the kind of the tension is of even a series like this where it's like these are definitely horror movies. But Hereditary didn't scare me that much. So that's why I feel this knee-jerk reaction to say, well, is it a horror movie or is it just a drama that's very upsetting? You know?
Yeah.
There's now a black cat in my yard, so I think I had a witch move in next door or something.
No.
The spirit of Halloween doth descended.
You had a Vavitch descend next door.
It's the spookiest season, so whoop-de-doo and dickory-dock. So, that's going to do it for today on the Two Chunks and a Hunk show, which is what we call it now. Midsummer next week. Check in for more of that exciting, fun, silly time that we all love so much. To end today's episode, I'd like for each of us to say our name and what character from Hereditary we would like to see fight Michael Myers from Halloween. For Two Chunks and a Hunk, I'm Jordan, and it's going to be Joan. Joan versus Michael Myers, because here's the way I see it. Either way, a great evil leaves this land.
Is she, she's like fully like a profane artificer, right? Like she would have spells and stuff against him.
I just think
what is her?
I think she's somebody's aunt who stumbled into a cult. So I think she's just going to get stabbed real good. But I mean,
gotcha. So she's going to invite him to her Facebook group.
Jamie Lee Curtis was regular in Halloween, and who knows how she turns out. We'll never get to talk about it, I guess.
That's from the Activia, though.
Yeah, that's true. She's just regular.
That's my moment I'm proudest of in the history of our podcast.
That's the Activia. Get out of here. It was too good.
I'm Dosh. And I would like to see this family's cute little sweet puppy dog fight Michael Myers.
Cute.
Because the dog is faster than a man and can just run away and go play somewhere else. The thing is that
watch Halloween again.
We never explicitly saw this dog perish. And so I'm choosing to believe the dog ran away and is now living with a family who will actually take care of it and love it appropriately.
It's seen things, man. That poor pup.
Poor little guy.
I'm Carter. And I think it's going to be Charlie. And twist, I think they're going to develop a friendship. I think she's going to go around with him and basically she's going to help him decide who to kill next. You know, it's not just about, yes, you can find horny 18-year-olds anywhere, but, let's draw it. Let's say, hey, I'm going to draw this one. If the X's are over their eyes, it's a no-no. It's an out. And I would say, too, let's give a call to, let's do Instagram. You can doodle on Instagram, can't you?
Yeah.
Can we get somebody to draw Charlie style, the three hosts of this podcast?
No, don't do that.
Please
don't do that.
If you want to, be it on our Discord chat or on our Instagram or just straight to Doge's address. Draw Charlie, draw for us.
No.
Draw for us.
No.
You can do the X's over the eyes if you want. You can do as many as you want.
You shouldn't.
Do a little cute little crown on my head. I'm a size 9 3/4, so.
Hey, this looks cool. Workouts while you work in. Free trial. Sure, I'll click here. My birth date for a matching playlist. That's fun.
It's easy to be unsafe online.
My mother's maiden name for a water bottle? Sweet.
Now it's easy to help protect yourself. Norton 360 with LifeLock gives you device security, a VPN for online privacy, and identity theft protection, all in one. Opt in to cyber safety. Save 25% or more off your first year at norton.com/news.